Whoa, we're back for some Bleach Soul Resonance, and we've got a bit of a slow week upcoming, if Giku and others are to be believed, which I do not feel is a particularly bad thing, I'm not gonna lie. One of the things I saw sort of souring people is that the limited time trial has not returned, but maybe I'm mistaken, and maybe I'm like crazy, but does it not feel like they just moved those resources elsewhere this time around? I don't have like the statistics to back this or anything like that. I'm not trying to say that they did and confirm that they did, but I've got 2.7 million con. I mean, you guys saw, if you've been following my channel, you saw at the beginning of this like go around, I did not have much con left. This is at a point where this number might as well have been zero. And alongside that, I've got 300 imaginary fragments. I've got 8 spiritual power nourishers. I did use some. And I've essentially got more stamina than I can really know what to do with. I've already used this. The day hasn't reset as of recording this. So I used a little bit more so it wouldn't spill over into the reserves. But all of my characters are geared that I want geared. I'm not really farming for their perfect gear at this point. I'm mostly kind of just waiting for the next scene to come out, though maybe I should decide more firmly on a thing to do now that I do of course have what is it? I do of course have my sights set on skipping my Yuri. If I pull him off of like pure dumb luck, like off of tickets or something, then you know we'll continue forward. But like the characters that I want built are built. The only characters I could really tinker with are like Sajin, who I don't really want to either. Tosin is replaced by Nalel. Rangiku is fine. Like I guess I could go for like a nice free to play Kitsugaya here. And I mean, if I wanted to, I could click on this and it's got crit rate and attack. I could go like I could look for like a better one, certainly. You know, this isn't this I actually farmed this recently. This one's pretty good, but yeah, I don't know, I'm kind of out of things to raise, if anything. Like you guys of course in the comments can tell me, are your resources like down? I think one thing that we're not getting obviously is a bunch of the insights for XP, and you know, insights here as well, the purple insights and so on. But other than that, I've got 2,000 stamp ectoplasm. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something, but after finishing up all the content, I feel like I've gotten a ton of random like ticky-tack materials this time around. But that could just be me. But let's get into the actual thing in this video that we're going to be talking about, which is some unpopular opinions, supposedly. I did not look through this thread, but someone did make a thread talking about one of their unpopular opinions, and I just wanted to think about it here. And as we move over, we've got Meech saying, what's your unpopular opinion or hot take that will get you downvoted to oblivion? I'll start. Aizen is overrated and glazed to hell, and the recent rerun banner was bait for people to chase boundaries before the devs kick power creep into overdrive. To preface this doesn't apply to people that are just Aizen superfans, of course, but free-to-play players that skipped key units to vertically invest boundaries into Aizen for meta reasons or for a rude awakening. Now, I want to stop there. I don't disagree with that sentiment. I've made several videos talking about, hey, you can pull Aizen, you can love Aizen, you could, if you're an Aizen superfan, which, I mean, there are gonna be. When Aizen came out, I said this character was Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta. People who just love Aizen. You know, I love Aizen, right? But I have always said, if you love Aizen and you are free to play, you need to be very set in the idea that you're going to need to skip like 2 or 3 banners. And I mean, of course, the pity rolls over, by the way. So when I say skip, I mean, you need to be okay with putting your Jade into a banner and just not hitting. Putting your Jade into weapons and not hitting, right? It doesn't mean you can't just use the resources on the banner, and if you get lucky, you get lucky. But you're not going to just be doing a full send on a banner, right? So, for example, I'm more of an Aizen fan than I am an LL fan. But I see the I see the vertical value in a character like Nellel and what she's offering, right? It's not that I don't feel that for Aizen. Aizen's extremely good character. But I think Aizen really starts to go crazy right around here, where I think he's just a completely different unit, right? And that's why I think that long term, I think my framing around how I pull for characters is going to continue to develop and change. And for people who are like, well, you know, it's a gacha, it's just gambling, you just throw the coins in and hopefully you get lucky. I do think that there is in every gacha essentially a pulling strategy. You know, you have to manipulate the chance of something happening to work in your favor. It can't just all be close my eyes, pray, send it, right? You know, there very much is a method to, you know, pulling for a character like Nellel. And then, you know, because we didn't spend like a Jade pulling for Toshido's weapon, which, by the way, we later found out, yeah, I kind of wouldn't have wanted to. I'm glad I didn't pull for Toshido's weapon, because we didn't do that. We actually had more to pull for Aizen, to pull for a Kenpachi, which we got Boundary 1, and then we got a Nellel Boundary 2 completely free to play, right? So it's like, that doesn't happen if every single time a character comes out, I pull down to 0 every single time, right? That's just how it goes. So the value of being a universal tactic is extremely overrated since the majority of endgame content encourages specific unit types. Yeah, yes and no. The thing that'll happen to Aizen is the endgame content will not allow him to do as much just raw damage on his switch-ins that he'd like. And the way they're going to power creep Aizen is they're going to continue to scale up that factor to the point where outside of B6 Aizen, you really won't see him perform, you know, doing 1 billion damage by himself, and he's supporting, and your main DPS is also doing 1 billion damage, right? That's like, that is true. So not only that, Spirit has received almost no shilling in the past 2 months, true. By the time Spirit gets major upgrades, he will likely be showing his age via power creep with a replacement on the way. This is true. We've talked about this before as well. So Giku was talking about like, hey, if you're a big Aizen fan, be a big Aizen fan. But if you're talking like reasonably as a free-to-play player, as a low-spending player, you might look at a character like Nellel, and you're gonna see her starting to make that creep. You know, I'm not talking about up here when you get B4 Aizen, up here when you get B6 Aizen, and he's doubling his crit rate and crit damage. I'm talking about you're a free-to-play, low-spending player, and the most you can hope for is B1, B2 before a rerun, right? Aizen, by the time we sort of get Aizen back, like by the time a free-to-play player gets B4, maybe even B6 by saving up and like waiting for a second rerun banner, a third rerun banner, we're probably gonna have like Yukatake tactic character who's Aizen, but you actually only need his first 2, right? That's just how it goes. That's power creep. It is what it is when it comes to gacha games. They're going to do that at some point. It's inevitable, you know? It's inevitable. He's by no means a bad unit. Well, I mean, of course not. He's the second best unit in the game. But the idea that he's in the top meta unit above the rest is kind of silly when both Gin and Nell are better investments for most accounts. I think that Nellel specifically is the better investment for both accounts. I've already talked a lot about how I think DPS characters will be the most replaceable units, sort of just period. You know, and Aizen and Nellel, a middling DPS character will be carried by having an Aizen, but a middling tactics character will not be carried by having a good DPS, right? You saw that with Byakuya and Kenpachi. The difference between using Kenpachi with a great DPS character and using Kenpachi with Byakuya, night and day. Night and absolutely day. He's somewhere in the 3rd to 4th best unit range. Definitely not number 1 like everyone claims. What is your take? Definitely, I think he's second. I think he is second. Because, like, who am I getting over him? It's okay, so in this case, Nellel, Gin, and then Aizen, I guess. If you wanted to rule that Gin is second just because of how powerful Nellel is, sure. I mean, that's a thing, right? That comes down to, like, team building and upper limits. I mean, you can look at that right here, especially for my free-to-play account, right? I have Trial 25-3 defeated on Thrust with my Nellel, but I can't exactly get Kenpachi over, you know, 25-3 with Aizen or Byakuya or even Nell, right? So it does come down to both of those characters being strong, and it's not like I have Gin duped or anything, right? It's just an LL dupe. So I don't know if I had the Aizen dupe, just Aizen 2, not Aizen like 4. If I had Aizen 4, I'd be 25-3 easy. But if I had Aizen 2, I don't really think that does it either. So I mean, maybe you could argue that, like, for the sake of argument, you could. Though I don't want to see too much Aizen downplay either. I think when a character is on top for a long time, what ends up happening is that we tick them down because we don't want to see people on top for too long. Eventually, we'll have this same conversation about Nell, and you'll be like, "What happened?" Right? But we got a bunch more opinions in this thread, it seems like. So let me go scan for another good one. So I like this one. Because I disagree with a part of this. So Gutierrez says, my unpopular opinion is that we shouldn't be normalizing dupes and premium teams. Other day I was searching for a Nell Gin Rangiku team to compare with the test I was doing, and I found no clear characters. By the way, if you want that, come over here. By the way, I have videos of me playing with a B0, Nell, Gin, and Rangiku. That's why I'm a free-to-play player. And most of the clears I found had Nell or Gin at B2. I'm not against investing vertically, and by the way, again, I've only gotten Nell and Gin in B2 after my first showcase, so if you've got someone who wants to see what B0 Nell and Gin does, like, and this was Nell with her, like, bugs and stuff, and she was still crushing. I thought the character was, like, too good still, so at B0, so once she got buffed, I was like, yeah, damn right I'm pulling for dupes for this character. This character got buffed? What? I'm not against investing vertically, but I think the majority of players will have most of their characters at B0 and only their super favorites duped, and they simply won't find content for their low budget investment teams. I'm also not a fan of how much this sub pushes high boundaries. Ultimately, whales want to flex. Whales and low spenders want to flex. They want to show off their accounts. They want to, show off what is possible when you push these characters. I will never disparage a whale because the whales are the reason the game runs. Period in gacha games. If you hate whales, you don't want to play the game because they're the only reason the game stays open. I have a handful of really useful B1s, Aizen and Nell, but the idea of telling people to skip a bunch of units to push for boundary 4 and 6 is actively bad advice. And then we have having a B6 character is overwhelmingly beneficial to free-to-play low spinners and 6 B0 characters. Let me see if anyone responds with it. What are you talking about? First with B6. I'm just going to skim this part real quickly. Sure. Okay, let's actually get to the point because I don't really think that person is right. But this is what I talk about, right? Is when you are free to play, when you are a low spender, I tend to not focus at all on this one right here. Even in times where I like come into a new character and I start reading their kit, what do I usually do? I just click here and I click here and then I skip this because this is just levels for the skills, which can be good. But at most, I'm saying that free-to-play players could maybe get boundary 4 if they skip some banners, right? But I'm usually here. I think that within the course of, if you started the game in the course of Nell coming out, you could probably have ended at a B2 Nell. I think so. With all the content in the game, with Nell carrying you through everything, with us getting resources to pull at least one copy of Nell, not counting all playing through all of the story and everything, you should be able to B2 Nell. I'm pretty sure. I think you'd have to get rid, because my assumption is you started the game on Nell's patch, which means you rerolled for Nell, right? So you're already starting one up, which means you're getting at least enough currency throughout the login events and everything for a B1, and that means you should at least be earning through story, through trials, through adventures, through towers for enough for a B2. I think that is absolutely reasonable, right? Right. So I think B1, B2 is or B0, B1, B2 is the most reasonable assertion of a character. For example, I really like Kenpachi. I did not go for his B2 because I knew Nell was going to be good and she was on the horizon. I went for his B1 though, and I wasn't even really pulling a ton for him. I just took the tickets that we were getting and I just threw them at the banner. I was just throwing them at the banner sort of haphazardly, right? So that's the thing. Like, I knew that getting either B1 or B2 would drastically increase the proficiency of my Kenpachi, and it did. It increases them a hell of a lot, because instead of having to do skill 1 into stab, into special attack, and to swap out and to wait and to stat, you know, over and over and over, so you can get one more rampage rate up, and then, you know, finally get your actual spirit pressure burst. You only need to do one rotation, and then you're in spiritual pressure burst, right? It's extremely powerful. It's extremely powerful, and it didn't take me extra resources, right? So I do think this is a thing to talk about, but that's why I grade characters on how good their first and second boundary are. I rarely talk about 4. Like, I think Geen, his 4 looks really good. I think impale damage increases 100% is really, really strong. But his B6 is crazy. Like, this is a crazy one, right? So I can't judge Geen on that. I could judge him here, where he's getting crit damage up to 6 times. Up to 6 times on his ultimate, which is really good. I think that one's really good. I think his B1 is okay. I do think it's good that it's giving him technique, but you know what I think is actually really crazy about Geen? Is if you got multiple points in his stamp, and you had a ton of crit rate for free. That's another thing, right? Because then it just helps him alleviate stats. My Geen, for all I'm trying, is at 50.7% crit rate, the best of times. Of course, I did dump a lot of my points into ailment damage, but, you know, it's something to talk about. Same thing with Aizen. I think the perfect cutoff for Aizen is B1, right? We could talk about B1 very free-to-play context. There's nothing wrong with talking about B1 in a free-to-play context, because this is achievable, you know? This is achievable. I could have pulled for Aizen, got his weapon, and then pulled for Aizen again, got his B1. So I do think it's worth having a conversation about that for free-to-play, especially for a character like Toshido, who is a popular character. You want B2, and it's not impossible to get. Now, if you were someone who was like, but you do got to get the B4 on him, though, it's like, no, the fuck you don't. Jesus, no. What are you talking about? You're not going B4 on Toshido of all characters. You're gonna go B4. You might as well go B4 Aizen, right? But that involves skipping at least a banner, 2 banners. So yeah, I do think it's an important conversation to have. I disagree that it's not, but you know, B4 B to B6, or actually I would say B3 to B6 is sort of out of the rate of most free-to-play players. You should want to see what characters do at B2. You should, because that is the rate at which you could get these characters for sure. I think this is sort of the last bit I want to talk about, which is, yeah, boundaries just extend the time that a unit would stay in the meta, but eventually even those boundaries wouldn't be enough anymore until power creep gets to the point that you have to pull the better unit for content. And they're saying like, yeah, you know, B4, B6 kind of a Trapstone's main goal is meta chasing. I think what we'll sort of just see is that it's how long do you want this character to stay around, right? It's true. And I think in the case of Nellel, that's why I talk about finding your skip will be important, because Nellel is going to be around a while. They're not going to release another ailment, thrust, tactics character who's hyper buffing crit damage, you know what I mean, has her own 25% native crit rate boost to herself, and is doing all of these different things for the next, like, you know, almost a quarter of the year, probably, right? Like a quarter, maybe even half the year, maybe even more. And if your argument is just, well, in half a year, Nellel's going to be power crept, it's like, yeah, but now you've saved for half a year, now you've possibly skipped for half a year, maybe you don't like Soifon, maybe you don't like Mayuri, maybe, because that's another thing to talk about is, even if a character is really good, like, I think that most of the designs in Bleach are pretty solid, but there are some characters that if they release tomorrow, I'd be like, you know, like, nothing against her, but like, and I'm sure there are people who are like, yo, Ududu's getting a limited SSR unit. If Ududu released tomorrow, I'm not really going, you know what I mean? Like, it's probably not happening for me. I'm not the biggest fan of like a Yuryu at this point in the series. Not super big on Yuryu in this arc. Like, there are characters where Hitsugaya, even I didn't reroll for Bankai Ichigo. I'm not a huge fan of this version of Hitsugaya. I pulled him mostly because I hadn't pulled at all since starting the game, so I was like, I might as well pull on something. So Once Gin and Aizen came around, I immediately was like, fuck, I wish I didn't pull on Hitsugaya, because I would have just spent it all on Aizen and Gin, who are two characters I really like, right? And so we're sort of looking at the game as like, well, you know, they'll get power crept eventually. I think what we're experiencing right now, and we can look at the results of the releases, right? So Bankai Ichigo releases first, he's a DPS. Right after him, Toshido releases, he's a DPS. Right after him, Aizen releases, he's a sub DPS. Right after him, Gin releases, he's a DPS. Right after him, Kenpachi releases, he's a DPS. Before that, we were supposed to get Grimjaw, he's a DPS. After that, we got Nellel, she's a sub DPS. Do you notice? And after that, we're getting Mayuri, by the way, who's a support. Do you notice how many times I said DPS just now? And I'm not talking about just tactics characters as sub DPS. I'm talking about DPS. The reality is, you're going to find specifically a DPS who you do not want, because they're going to release more DPSs than sub DPSs and supports and the like. Even though it doesn't seem reasonable, because obviously tactic characters make up 33% of the game, quote unquote, because, or 33% of the team, quote unquote, because they are always present on a team. These sub DPS characters are already walled if you compare them to how many DPS characters we've gotten. So when you commit 2 boundaries to a character who buffs 80% crit damage, I'm not gonna lie, like, and she's specifically doing ailment, we're not getting her again for a long time. It feels like, at least. Does it not feel like that? So we'll have to see, certainly. And it would just be surprising, I guess. It'd be surprising. And I'm not gonna lie, if you have a boundary to Nellel and tomorrow sub DPS, you know, tactics character Soifon comes out and she's ailment focused and she does everything Nellel does, but she does it 10% better, I'm not fucking pulling for that. Because you know what that Soifon doesn't have? Boundary 2 for me. Now, if you're gonna say that, okay, well now I'm gonna change the goalpost and now Soifon has every single thing, she does 10% more damage than Nellel, and she has the same exact boundary 1 and 2, but she has it in her B0, then it's like, sure, man, you got me. You got me again. But I'm not gonna lie, they did that in Jujutsu Kaisen Phantom Parade, and guess what I did when I had my account for, I think it was half a year, because we're like a bit behind on global. I think I had it for my account for half a year. I pulled on Red Gojo, the anniversary unit, Red Gojo. I did not get him. I re-rolled a fresh account, completely fresh account, pulled him. I've never seen my original count since then. So I guess if they want to just absolutely ham-fist in the strongest character in the game, SSR Soifon, who does everything Nellel does and also has 2 boundaries for free, I guess I'll see y'all at the reroll screen. But I think they're not going to do that. I think they're not going to do that for a while. So it's not so much that, you know, Aizen, you know, your B4 Aizen is like a waste. It's that your B4 Aizen is probably going to be better on average than your B0 Aizen replacement, just naturally, right? It does mean that people with B1 of that character, with B2 of that character, is probably going to beat your Aizen, but it means that you can save 18,000 Jade by not pulling on that character, because guess what? You're not going to have enough unless you get really lucky for B0 of that character and B1 of that character and B2, you know, whatever it needs to make up for your B4 Aizen. It's not a waste of time, right? Investing in these characters isn't a complete waste of time. I've talked a lot about boundaries, and I think people misunderstand boundaries in their role in this game. And more so, they misunderstand the pull economy in gacha in general. But I'm done waxing. I looked through the thread. There wasn't too much more that I was like, yeah, let's get into it. There was some being like, you know, I like ZZZ more than this game so far. And it's like, yeah, it hasn't ZZZ been out for like multiple years. And also is like, it's like a hyper goon game. It has like a ton of money. Like, yeah, I mean, I could talk about that if you want, but I mean, I played ZZZ at the start as well. I played ZZZ day 1, and it didn't keep me for more than a month. I'll say that. you know. And it was mostly because I just didn't like the characters. I thought the wolf was cool. I thought the shark girl was cool. And then I was watching a bunch of 3D characters do TikTok movements as they animate, right? So it's just, I don't know, the different strokes for different folks. Is that I love Nemu feet in the chat right now? Whose mans is this? I gotta get out of here. Like if you liked the video, subscribe, join the club. We all go make it, and peace.